Is validational intimacy just a form of genetic transactional intimacy? You can, in Aaron Clary's world, it is. Do women put out for Chad to get good genes and sexy sons in return? Well, if you want to call it an exchange of value, then yeah. But the way I see it, as far as like validation is concerned, like Chad, to get the good genes, Chad doesn't necessarily have to have a Lamborghini and a house in the fucking Hamptons. Okay. He doesn't have to have those things to get, for her to get those. He only has to have one thing: be fucking hot, be attractive. Don't be unattractive. That's all Chad has to do. Okay. And again, I hate even using that term. But does she get sexy sons in return? Yeah, I mean, you could look at, like, here's the thing: is like I've had this conversation before. Like, people, oh, Rollo, these guys don't think this stuff out. Well, we do if you just fucking listen for half a second. But I've had conversations with Aaron Clary, who is an actuary, and you know how Aaron is, and you know how I am, and that's why we get along so well. Like, Aaron is like one of my best friends. So, but we've had these conversations because I've said before, like, there's a difference between validational sex and transactional sex. And Aaron would probably argue with me on that, because he would say, well, everything becomes transactional anyways. And he wouldn't be wrong. I mean, you can also look at Briffault's law. Briffault's law is essentially as if there's no benefit for the woman to be involved in the relationship, no relationship occurs. Remember that Briffault was talking about the animal kingdom and not necessarily about human interactions at that time, although we apply it to that. So, and it does kind of cross over. So the idea is that everyone on planet Earth is a gold digger by order of degree. And you could still make that comparison. But the thing is like, prior to the pairing, prior to there being any sort of like socially, like, remember, we call it socially enforced monogamy. Well, there's the socially part of it is included in that. And anytime you put that word in there, it's going to be transactional. The other part of this, and I keep hearing Orion Taraban talk about this, and I like Orion, and I would love to talk to him again. I think he rips off my stuff quite a bit, but not in a bad way. I think it's just like, whenever I listen to Orion Taraban, Dr. Orion Taraban, like, he was in Red One. I couldn't be there. It was my anniversary weekend. I really regret. I wish I could have been there, but I'm not going to give up my anniversary for that. We'll get him in again. I would love to get Dr. Taraban in again. It's not that I get, like, I don't care. Like, I don't care if he's lifting my material. It's just like, I want him to, like, it's only half of it. Like, there's more to it. Like, let's add some more to this. And you have such a fucking great video, or you probably get more engagement if we like flesh this out all the way. And so when he's got a part in his book where he talks about how, like, women run a mutiny on the marriage or something like that. It's like directly out of my essay, Mutiny. It's literally titled Mutiny. And it's exactly the same principle and the same concept. It's not something he came up with. I mean, I was talking about this back in like 2013, 2014, right? Again, Red Pill is open source. That's fine. My problem was like, dude, just like do the whole thing. Just like do the whole fucking thing. If you're going to rip me off, at least rip the whole thing off instead of just half of it off. And I'm okay with that, right? But the thing with Orion, he was what was he talking about? He was talking about how the transaction needs to be invisible, right? And then he uses the idea of, like, we don't talk about our salaries, right? Or we don't, like, that's the nature of our working arrangement with our employers, right? I work for you and you give me money, and then that's sort of the invisible nature of the transaction that we have. He wants to think that, like, and to a degree, I kind of agree with them, is that, like, the transactional nature of sex and intimacy between a man and a woman is there, but it's not something we like. You want it to be invisible. That's kind of like what he made the comparison of, like, when you are at a restaurant and they bring you the check, and it's always in like it's always in the folder, the folded up leather bound thing that looks like a wallet, right? So that you can look and you say, okay, now it's invisible. Here's my credit card. That's the ideal nature. And now, because we have open hypergamy, the check thing is always open. It's like, we're always fucking you guys. Guys realize that they're getting fucked, or they realize that there's an exchange or that it is transactional, but they don't want to, like, they want to keep their heads in the sand. And I think that the only reason why that would make sense to Dr. Taraban is because his only frame of reference when it comes to sex is the transaction, not validation. I like you, Orion. This is not a flame, but you don't strike me as the kind of guy who gets pulled into the women's bathroom at a concert and have his dick sucked by two chicks. And again, I don't say that I say that out of love. Okay. Like guys who fuck know, right? They understand the nature of validational sex versus transactional sex. It's not some, like, when somebody like Rich Cooper says, don't chase women, chase excellence, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Well, that works if you're a guy who already fucks. So guys who don't, like, the guys who fuck the most are the guys who don't have to chase. It's not transactional. They're in it because they have the sport fucking gene or something, They don't think twice about it. That's why they make some of the worst, like, advice givers. Like, a guy who's like sort of a natural alpha. I just smile and they want to fuck me, right? That's not the guy who's going to analyze female behavior and understand female nature, because he's never, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Or, you don't have to, why question it? So their advice is just going to be like, just look good and just smile at them and just be normal. Like, that's their advice, right? Because they don't know any different, because their entire frame of reference is validational. They've never had to pay for sex. They've never had to chase a girl. They've never had to, like, put out the effort, because girls will just will fuck them no matter what, because they're guys, they're fuck boys, right? They're guys that women want to have said, that 4.5%. That's why I kind of have to, like, whenever I talk to Justin Waller, who I consider one of my closest personal friends, like, Justin was like, he hates on pickup artists, right? It's like, oh, these guys, they're not for real. Sooner or later, a woman's going to find you out and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, but this is the same guy who, like, has, side pieces all over the fucking world, and he's not marrying them. And it doesn't matter whether he's for real or not. They just want to have a good, fun, validational sexual experience with him. Most of them aren't trying to lock him down, or they understand, like, who he is, and they understand he has a baby mama, and they understand he's, like, very devoted to her, who's basically his wife, who I consider a really close personal friend too. But that's the nature of their relationship. And Justin is going to be a guy who's going to get laid in spite of himself. Dr. Taraban's not that guy. Hell, I'm not even that guy. Maybe Mike is that guy, but Mike doesn't have to chase. I'm trying to think of guys who don't have to chase, right? Justin Waller doesn't have to. Scott Eichler. Scott. You guys don't even know what I'm talking about. Scotty he's this guy that part of MOA, and he's been hanging out with us quite a bit at Babes in Toyland. He's a good dude, but another guy who just basically gets laid in spite of it. It doesn't matter. Like, he's got money, but if he didn't, he'd still get laid. But that's validational sex, because he's the guy that women want to have sex with, whether he's got money or not. He's getting it no matter what. And he's in that 4.5%. Those guys, once you've been in the 4.5%, and even if you slip back out of it, you still understand the nature of validational versus transactional sex. So that's the only point I was making, is, like, for Dr. David Buss and the rest of these guys who, these, like I said, the evil psychic gatekeepers who want to talk about just one aspect of the equation of alpha fucks to beta bucks. To these guys, there's no alpha fucks. And if there is, then those women are like, they're unsavory. They're unwholesome. They're damaged. They're, where'd it go?
Emotional damage.
Yeah, I hate that term, because that's always their cop out. Well, yeah, of course there's women like that. The crazy sluts who have daddy issues and everything. They're not normal women. No, they're like the chicks that went after the Tinder swindler, normal as anybody else. The chicks that are fucking, hybristophilia, they're normal as anybody else. You see those chicks who are, let's see, the women who are the teachers who are banging their 15-year-old students. You would not say that they're damaged when you meet them. As soon as they go and, like, start fucking around with, like, 15-year-old boys, then yeah, because that's the only way you can explain that away. Well, the way I see that is that they just wanted to fuck a guy who was 15 years old or 16, 18, doesn't matter, because that's the body type that they wanted to fuck. Most of the women I remember when, because I don't know if you guys remember, but I did the full outline of why women in teaching positions, why this is endemic in our certainly our public, if not, and our private education systems, because there are more women in the education, more female teachers than there are men. So statistically, a law of averages, statistically speaking, that's why there's so many of them. But why? Why is this so endemic? What is it? Are they all damaged? Do they all have, like, because there's a lot of them. Like if it was just a few isolated handful of girls, okay, maybe they have some sort of commonality. Maybe they got some, maybe they're in they're cluster B or something like that, but they're not. They're not. This is what they wanted to do because there's an alpha fucks component to their dualistic, pluralistic mating strategy that we just completely sweep under this fucking carpet in favor of, well, women only cheat because they want to get with higher value, higher status men. Clearly not, because we wouldn't have this endemic of teacher student, statutory grape cases if that weren't the case. If that were the case. They can't all be damaged.